So I finished season 1 of The Terror. I wanted to talk about why I think it's fantastic horror. Now, if you haven't seen it, simple premise. You have a bunch of sailors from the British Empire, and they're trying to find the Northwest Passage. So what they want to do is they want to go from Britain, go across the Atlantic, go north of Canada, and find a way through so they can get to the Pacific Ocean. You can get to China, all the spices and all the trade. This is during colonial times. So they're trying to find the Northwest Passage, and doesn't work out well for them, and they get menaced by 3 different kinds of horror. Now, there's an actual monster, the Tuunbaq, chasing them. There is the human element, and then there's just the setting. And I think, in particular, the setting, they did such a great job not having it just be a cliched, oh, it's really cold. They really created this unique setting that was very nightmarish, very terrifying, and I'll talk about why towards the end of my video. So let's start with the monster, though. So first I want to talk about the design of the monster, then I'll talk about conceptual interpretations of just what this monster is. So if you look at the design, it's great design. It's from the same person who worked on the Cloverfield monsters, did a lot of the work here, and probably the most distinctive feature is it has these long, almost swimmer's arms, these very long arms, these short, stout legs, and it gives it this weird kind of hunchback. And when it's running forward, it seems like it's got this weird mount and ridge, and it's almost the face almost juts into the ground when it's on all fours. And then when it stands up, you just see how very strange, kind of elongated neck, and just very different than what you think of when you think of a bear. But if you look at some pictures of bears, you can kind of see a little bit of these elements as well, but I really thought it gave it this strange, almost loping unpredictability in its movements, rather than just kind of consistent fastness, which gave it a really kind of like frightening aspect, because you didn't really understand just how this thing moved, and you could almost feel like the way it was moving, there was even, you threw in that supernatural element where all of a sudden the creature could do things that a normal physical flesh and blood creature couldn't. And now talking about conceptually just what kind of creature this is, you could say that it's not supernatural at all, and you could say that, look, in this time of exploring when the world hadn't been completely explored yet, you could still have these prehistoric remnants, these great monsters that myths and legends are based of. We just haven't stumbled across them yet. So there is this sense of, because of the time period, you could stumble across this kind of great fearsome creature. Google prehistoric bears, Google king polar bear, and you get an idea. But the show definitely says, no, this isn't the case. There's definitely some supernatural elements, and you could say it's a symbol of just the unconquerable wilderness and nature. And you have the British Empire in all its hubris trying to cover the globe, bring all of nature under dominion and heel of the British Empire. And this is kind of a symbol that, no, nature, there's always going to be these fearsome beasts, and the more humans try to just conquer the entire globe, the more these beasts are going to lash back. But the fact that there's native people living, Inuit people living in the area there, and the fact that the creature doesn't attack them, it seems to indicate that either it's some kind of tribal god, it's some kind of defender. So basically, in a sense, if the British are able to find this Northwest Passage and set up this trade route, maybe their commerce and just their domination of the area is going to cause the extinction of the people already living there. So this beast, by helping prevent them from finding this passage, it's a kind of defending this tribe. Or it could just be kind of an ethical god, where it sees the arrogance of these people just trampling all over this local culture, and it kind of rises up to defend them. But if you look at the Inuit mythology that it's based on, very loosely based on, I'll say, it's much more so, rather than a kind of tribal god, it's kind of personal spirit and kind of personal demon that you can summon it. And here we see how you have to summon it, or at the very least communicate it by cutting out your tongue. And then you become a shaman, and then you become able to communicate with this creature. And it's very interesting how you have to cut out your tongue. In some sense, it's like by you cutting out your tongue and giving up your ability to communicate with the rest of the world and just normal everyday life, you gain a kind of deeper communication to communicate with the spirit world and to communicate with these monstrous spirits. And then you see how this relates to the human evil, and you see Hickey, who's a primary antagonist on the show. Now, he is lower class. He's never within civilization, within this British Empire, with their etiquette and their politeness and their plates of china. He's always been on the bottom. And suddenly, when they're thrust in this emergency situation, and suddenly you're in a more primal state where he's able to become the leader just by virtue of his brutality and what he's willing to do. Even eating human flesh, he's willing to basically do what other people won't. And suddenly he's on top and he's the king, and he sees this new god as he sees the British god, which I guess is the Christian god of mercy and politeness, or whatever interpretation the British Empire currently has, and it doesn't do anything for him. He's on the bottom in that, but when he's exposed to this new god, and he sees that there's other gods I can pledge my allegiance to, suddenly he just fully embraces the situation, and he doesn't even really want to get out by the end of it. He doesn't even really want to get out and escape the situation. He's fully just willing to embrace. And you see how he cuts his tongue out, and imagine seeing something so fearsome and so powerful, and seeing some kind of creature that's so beyond your ability to comprehend that it changes everything you know and think you know, and all your value system, to the point where you willingly cut out your own tongue just for the chance to maybe pledge allegiance to this creature. So I just thought the exploration of what humans might do when faced with this monster and the different reactions we see people have, I thought that was fascinating as well. And then lastly, the setting. So we get those classic, oh, it's really cold elements, where there's one where he puts the spyglass up to his eye, and when he pulls the spyglass, it's frozen to his eye, and he yanks off some of his skin. And there were those great little elements, but what I liked much more was we started to see how day and night started to blend together. It just always seemed like there weren't these bright days and dark nights. There was just this constant twilight and this constant sense of it was kind of the same time always. There were no cycles anymore. You looked from side to side to side, and everything just looked the same for as far as you could see. It wasn't like there were mountains and landmarks that you could ground yourself to. No, it was just kind of a constant sameness. And it reminded you, it wasn't so much cold anymore. It was more like limbo. And it was more like something beyond time, beyond space. And I love the shots we get of the people living here. And we see their tents, and how not only is it just a different lifestyle, they're eating different food. No, it seems like it had a fundamental different sense of reality, where you think if you had a people living where their notion of cycles and days of the week and years, everything was so different to us with our 365 days in a year, 9 to 5. And then out here, where your interpretation of linearity and cycles could be so different, might not your interpretation of time, and even your view towards mortality and death, could that not be different as well? And you see the different effects that being in this kind of limbo environment have. And you see how for some people it's just madness, and you see just these crazy thoughts. You see the blurring of these distinctions between upper and lower class. You see all these for the British Empire, there's such a distinction between the lower class and their morality and the upper class and how moral they were. And you see those distinctions just be obliterated. You see the distinction between man and beast just be obliterated and you see them, no better example of this, when they're eating the human flesh on the fancy china from the British Empire. It's just a fascinating, striking visual. And then you see the opposite as well, where a lot of the people living in this environment, they don't go mad from it, and they actually find a great peace and probably some spirituality, some enlightenment. So I knew there was going to be a great monster, but probably my biggest surprise with the show was just these incredible visuals we get of this place that most of us will never go to, but I guess we can go to it through a TV show for a little bit.